Okay, imagine this. You spend 30 years of your life turning a piece of land into your own personal paradise. You plant a whole forest of fruit trees, pouring in your own money, your sweat, your dreams, all because you believe that land is yours. That was the reality for a man named Danilo Reyes. But then, after 3 whole decades, a legal bombshell threatens to wipe it all away. This is the story of his incredible fight for what's fair, a fight that went all the way to the Supreme Court. Now, to really get what was at stake here, you have to understand the sheer scale of what Danilo Reyes built. We're talking about more than 1,000 mango trees. 1,000! And that's not even counting the hundreds of citrus and guayabano trees. You see, this wasn't just some backyard garden. It was a massive, thriving orchard. It was his life's work. And look, this wasn't a case of some guy knowingly squatting on land that wasn't his. Not at all. The Supreme Court itself pointed out that Reyes bought the property way back in 1970, and he did it in good faith. He had a title that, for all anyone could tell, was perfectly valid. As far as he knew, he was the rightful owner, and he had every reason to believe his investment was safe. And here's the twist. This is where the whole story just gets turned completely on its head. What happens when you build your entire dream on a foundation you think is solid rock, only to find out, decades later, that the ground under your feet was never actually yours to own in the first place? That single question, that's the heart of this entire legal saga. So you're probably asking, how on earth could this even happen? Well, to get to the bottom of Reyes's crazy situation, we have to rewind and look at the legal history of the land itself. The real problem, it turns out, wasn't anything Reyes did. It was with the title he got from the very beginning. This timeline really tells the story. For 17 years, 17, Reyes is out there, planting, growing his orchard. It was only then, in 1987, that the government showed up and filed a lawsuit to take the land back. And that kicked off another decade-long legal battle. The whole case really boils down to this one critical legal difference. You see, in the Philippines, there are two main types of public land. Some of it is alienable, which is just a fancy way of saying it can be sold off and owned by private citizens. But other land, like timberland, is inalienable. It belongs to the public, to the state, and it can never be privately owned. Period. And yup, you guessed it. The court discovered that a huge chunk of the property, we're talking over 16 hectares, was actually classified as inalienable timberland. And that was the fatal flaw. It meant his original title was, in the eyes of the law, totally void from the moment it was issued. You just can't have a valid private title for public forest land. So, after this long, drawn-out fight, the system delivered its verdict. The law had spoken, and the conclusion seemed totally absolute, final. To really understand just how final this was, we need to talk about this really powerful legal idea called res judicata. It's Latin, and it literally means a matter decided. It's a cornerstone of the whole legal system. It basically says that once a court makes a final decision, that's it. The debate is over. You can't just keep suing over the same thing again and again, hoping for a different result. It's meant to create certainty, and the final verdict was just crushing for Reyes. As you can see, the court didn't just say his title was void. It didn't just say the land goes back to the government. He was ordered to get off the property. And then came the final blow. His request to be paid for the value of all his trees and improvements denied. He was about to lose everything. So that was it. The land was gone. The case was officially closed. By every legal standard, that should have been the end of the line for Danilo Reyes. But it wasn't. Because after losing the land, Reyes did something amazing. He started a whole new fight. But this time, it wasn't about the land itself. It was about the thousands of trees he had personally planted on it. So the new battle lines were drawn. On one side, you had the government making a pretty straightforward argument. Hey, the case is closed. Remember res judicata? The trees are on our land now, so they belong to us. But Reyes came back with a powerful argument based on simple fairness. He said, wait a minute, I was a planter in good faith, and for the state to just take my trees for free, that's unjust enrichment. So, what does it mean to be a planter in good faith?
It's a specific legal status, and it's for people exactly like Reyes. It's for someone who builds or plans on land sincerely and honestly believing they are the owner. The key is that they had no idea there was any problem with their title when they were putting in all that work and money. And under the law, that status gives you certain rights.
And that leads to the other huge idea here, unjust enrichment. This is one of the most basic principles of justice we have. It says that nobody, not even the government, should be allowed to get rich at someone else's expense unfairly. If you get a benefit you didn't earn and don't deserve, you should have to pay for it. Reyes was basically saying, fine, you can have the land back, but you can't have the fruits of my labor for free. This whole situation set the stage for a truly fascinating legal showdown. The Supreme Court was now stuck between a rock and a hard place. On one side, you have a rigid, important legal rule, and on the other, a very profound question of what is right and what is fair. The court was essentially juggling three big things. First, you have Reyes's rights as a guy who planted in good faith. Then you have the need to respect the finality of the law, that whole res judicata thing. And kind of hanging over all of it was a practical environmental concern. What's going to happen to this amazing, mature forest if the law doesn't find a way to protect it? And in its final ruling, you can really feel the court's sense of basic human decency. They considered the idea of the government just taking all of those trees without paying Reyes a single dime. And they called it what it was. Not just unfair, not just inequitable. They said it would be cruel. That one word shows you they were looking past the legal technicalities to the real-world impact on a person. So, the solution they came up with was, frankly, brilliant. It was simple, and it was just. Step 1. Send the case back to the trial court to figure out the exact monetary value of all those trees. Step 2. The government has to pay Danilo Reyes for that value. And Step 3, the government can then get its money back from whoever ends up leasing the land and actually profiting from all of his hard work. Now, from a legal perspective, this was a massive deal. The court consciously and explicitly made an exception to that ironclad rule of res judicata. They even used a special Latin phrase for it, pro hoc vis, which means for this one specific case. They were essentially saying, look, normally this rule is untouchable, but in this unique situation, following it blindly would lead to such a terrible injustice that we have a duty to bend it. Justice, they decided, had to win out over technicality. And that's what we're left with, isn't it? This powerful, lingering question. The story of Danilo Reyes and his forest of trees isn't just about a property dispute. It's a deep dive into that tension that can sometimes pop up between the strict letter of the law and our basic sense of fairness. It really makes you think, what is the ultimate point of a legal system? Is it just to enforce the rules, no matter what? Or is it to find a way to do what's right? This case gives us one pretty extraordinary answer.